Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're going to be taking a first look at a brand new game which comes out today, and that game is War in the East 2. This is a game that has been on a lot of folks' radar as one of their most anticipated war games or strategy games of 2021. It was on my list for most anticipated war games of 2020, but it didn't come out in 2020. It ended up getting pushed to 2021, but now it is here. Today is the day it comes out. It is available. It's not on Steam yet, although I wouldn't be surprised if eventually it ends up there. It is available through Matrix and Slytherin's website directly. The game is on the more expensive side at $79.99, but this is a game that, in my opinion, will likely be worth it for anybody who is interested in the Eastern Front in World War II. This is a game which uses an I go, you go system for 1 week turns. So it's a turn-based war game that takes place from June 1941 to August of 1945. Every turn represents 1 week, and the way it basically works is the Axis player goes first. They do their air operation phase, they do their ground operation phase, they also do some logistics, and then once that concludes, then those 7 days are run out, and then the Allied player or the Soviet player goes, and then they do their air operation, their combat results occur, then they do their ground operations, those combat results occur over a 7-day period, and then after that, the turn passes back to the Axis. By the way, one of the cool features that's mentioned in the manual that is not out yet, but I believe will be soon, is a really neat co-op feature where you can play by-email games, but you can have up to 4 people on each team built into the game. So you could do this massive game which looks at the Eastern Front down to the battalion level of infantry units and down to the squadron level of air units, and you could manage to do that with a group of folks via a play-by-email system, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to maybe doing some kind of co-op on YouTube. With that being said, I think that's kind of all the overview I can really give at this point. What we're going to do is we're going to jump into a live stream, which I did last night of the game on my Twitch channel, and we'll jump into the game. Today we're going to take a very brief look at some of the menu screens and a little bit of a sort of a snapshot of the campaign as the Soviets, but then what we're going to do is we're actually going to jump into the tutorial mission, which the game recommends. Now, fair warning, the game says it's the tutorial, it's meant to be the tutorial, but there's no actual instructions in the game itself. You actually have to look at the manual, which is a 500-page manual, in order to figure out what you're supposed to do in the tutorial. That said, the scenario that is the tutorial and that we're going to be playing tonight is on the simpler side, so it is one of those scenarios where it is easier to pick up the game if you're trying to play that and learn how to play. And it is a massive game. It's a game that allows you to play through the Second World War on the Eastern Front in absolutely minute detail in 1 week turn increments. The game, I'm going to show you here for a second, this isn't what we're going to be playing today, but the game's grand campaign has just a sheer mind-boggling amount of information here. Each hex in the game is 10 miles across, and you can see units are modeled down, typically down to the division, but also down to the battalion level in certain circumstances. Air units are modeled in squadron or group levels, and it is just a game of sheer immensity, and yet it's, you know, one of the biggest conflicts in human history. It's looking at the Eastern Front in World War II, the struggle between the USSR and the Nazi German regime. And so the game, as I said, starts with 1 week turn increments. It starts in June 22nd of 1941, and the grand campaign allows you to play all the way through to August of 1945. I think that's sort of the date where if you haven't won yet, you have a stalemate or something to that effect. And you can see here, this is a campaign that I started and played 1 turn as the Soviets. So the Germans have already broken through, created 2 big, nice pockets. They've taken Minsk, and I'm about to do my turn. It is I go, you go. So that means the Germans do their turn or the Axis do their turn, because there's quite a few. There's over 1 million German allied troops involved as well. And then the Soviets get to go. There's a whole bunch of information that this game allows you to see and information that this game conveys via some pretty impressive simplification, but also not exactly simple, if that makes sense. So, for example, you can go to the order of battle screen and you can see the Soviets have 2.4 million troops, 40,000 guns, 11,000 tanks or armored vehicles, I guess, AFVs, 4,000 fighters, 3,600, I think those are tactical aircraft, and 685 bombers. You can go through the entire Soviet Army's OOB down to the anti-aircraft battalion level. So you can see quite a lot of detail is included in this game. And it's just, you know, if you were just looking through all these menus, it's like spreadsheet level. But you can see here the Germans have 3.2 million men on the map right now. Axis allies 1.2 million. And then the Soviets have 2.6 million on the map. They have another 1.4 million in theater boxes. And the game does leverage theater boxes to sort of reflect Soviet troops that are deployed in the Far East. That's where the bulk of these troops are, 600,000. 240,000 in the Transcaucasus, 300,000 in the Northern Front. That's the front against the Finns. And then 290,000 in reserve. Units can be pulled from theater boxes or added to theater boxes. It is very important for the Axis to manage their theater boxes because while this isn't really the case for the Soviets, the Axis forces have to make sure they have sufficient forces in their North Africa theater box, their Italy theater box, their Western Europe theater box as the war continues. Otherwise, you know, when the Allies land in D-Day, if there's no German troops there opposing them, they're going to run to Germany really quick. The game's map is absolutely huge. So, you know, basically Germany is what's included here in this map that we can maneuver on and attack, like as far west as Germany. You've also obviously got Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, etc. But the map itself covers all of Europe, which makes me wonder if at some point in time, perhaps because there are Allied units in, what do you call it? There are Allied units in the OOB. Like if you go into the scenario editor, you can see American divisions, British divisions, things like that. So I'm assuming that those are all units that are represented in the theater boxes, but it does make me wonder if the foundations are there perhaps to merge War in the East 2 with War in the West, which are similar systems to perhaps someday have a War in Europe type game. Although I can't even imagine managing the Eastern Front from the Soviet perspective, let alone trying to model the entire war. With that being said, let's go ahead. I just showed you the OOB. There's a losses screen as well, which shows you casualties for units and divisions and things like that based on turns. You also can see, these are air losses, but you can see ground losses here. You can see destroyed units over here. And so you've got a whole bunch of information that you can, actually, I guess we don't have any destroyed units yet. Not many, I guess, or maybe actually we do, I think here, but you can see air losses down to the individual aircraft type. So you've got I-16s, MiG-3s, Yak-1s, Yak-2s, Su-2s, SB-2s, IL-2s, etc. And you can see ground losses, which include down to the tank level. So if you want to know how many tanks the Germans have lost, how many Panzer IIIGs, you can see that down to the individual tank level. It is just absolutely mind-boggling in terms of the amount of detail that's included in this game, and it is very unique amongst games like that. By the way, Gem Speed and La Beast Man, thanks for the follow. Lake, thanks for the resub as well. And whatnot. So you can see, obviously, there's a whole bunch of information that you can get in this game. You can show production as well, which shows the individual production that's occurring. I don't think you have a lot of control. By the way, this game has like a 500-page manual if you really want to understand everything that's going on. But I don't think you have a whole lot of control over production itself. But you do have some control over where that production is allocated. Additionally, capacity of, armament production that can be damaged based on where the Germans or the Soviets take different bases, take different factories, or, potentially there's strategic bombing as well involved in the game. So there's a whole bunch of controls that you have or information that you have access to over the production side of things. Down again to the individual airframe level. I'm not sure if it goes down to the engine level for aircraft like War in the Pacific does, but you can see down to we've got T-28 production, T-34 production. You can see the amount that's in the pool, the amount that's been built, the amount that is assigned to different units in the field. So this is just so huge. Yeah. Metric screens, there's a whole bunch of graphs if you want to take a look at different information. Total men, obviously this is the first turn, so I think we'll take a look a little bit at this when we jump into the tutorials battle, which is what we're going to fight today. But I did want to just kind of show you some of that. Also, there is a weather screen that shows you different weather forecasts for different parts of the map. That's a big enhancement they've made over War in the East 1, where there were sort of, I think, like 3 different sections of the map, and they had sort of uniform weather across the entire map, and they've really enhanced that to make weather more variable, more localized, and less sort of like it's the muddy season, it's the winter season. They've tried to make weather a big part of the game and have real impacts on the gameplay as well. So with that being said, I think, you know, we can take a look at reinforcements, and again, it's just a whole bunch of information that I don't think anyone's going to sort of retain in a short video or stream here. But again, the game is big, and that's kind of what I'm trying to show, and it's very unique in its representation of the Eastern Front. So with that being said, what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at the scenario that's meant to be played as the tutorial, because I showed you a whole bunch of stuff that probably is a little bit mind-numbing. I think if we take a look at this, one of these introductory scenarios, it can give you a little bit more, a slightly less overwhelming look at the game. So you can see when we go into the scenarios here, there's 2 introductory scenarios, which are kind of meant as tutorials. And then you've got a whole bunch of other scenarios as well. So you've got the road to Leningrad, which is a 16-turn scenario with the drive on Leningrad in 41. The destruction of the Southwestern Front, which is a 17-turn scenario, which I believe is probably the attack on Kiev or the destruction of the Soviet armies there. You've got Operation Typhoon, which is 14 scenarios looking at the attack on Moscow. Red God of War, which is the November to February of 43, so that's about 11 turns. Looking at the Soviet Operation Uranus near Stalingrad. Red Army Resurgent, which is sort of 42 to 43. It's about 17 scenarios of the winter offensive of 42 to early 43. And then you've got a Vistula to Berlin scenario or campaign, I guess, which is the final 20 scenario or 20 turns of the war in the East, basically the Russian drive on Berlin. And then you've got 2 really big campaigns. If you want to play as the Soviets, it's probably more fun to start with Stalingrad to Berlin, which starts with November 42 all the way to the fall of Berlin in 45. Presumably that's meant to be like, hey, if you want to be the Russians on the offensive, this is the scenario for you. It's over 130 turns. Or if you want the entire war experience, 1941 to 45, you've got a 215 turn scenario or campaign, which looks at the entire war from start to finish. That one might be more interesting playing as the Germans, because for the Soviets for the first year or so, you're probably going to be at a pretty big disadvantage. But I think that's what we're going to do eventually, playing as the Soviets, because everyone else is going to play as the Germans, I'm sure. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the introductory scenario. Velikie Luki, and I may be mispronouncing that here. It's a 10-turn scenario that is looking at a isolated Soviet counteroffensive in the winter of 1942 to 43, where the Soviets are attempting to launch an offensive against the Germans. This is, you know, overall there's an offensive going on against the Rzhev-Vyzima salient by the Soviet, but the Soviet Third Shock Army is beginning an offensive against the Third Panzer Army at Velikie Luki, which is a strategic location that the Soviets need to take in order to make the Rzhev salient kind of untenable, is my understanding. So let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, so this is obviously a much smaller map than what you just saw. So if you take a look at this and we zoom out, you can see this is obviously just a segment of the front. But this particular scenario is focusing on capturing 4 key objectives for the Russians. So this is a Russian counteroffensive against the Germans. You want to take Velikie Luki, which is sort of your primary objective. This is a fortified town that is key to the Soviets' counteroffensive against the Rzhev salient. But then you also want to take Nievel in the south. You want to take Novosolinki. I'm sorry, my pronunciations are always really bad. A little bit further west of this initial objective. And then Luknaya up here in the north is another objective. Presumably that's because you're cutting this rail line, which runs north to south. And then also, you know, you're making your anyway. So with that being said, you can see here we start with a much smaller force. And you can see it's a little bit more balanced, I think, in terms of just the type of forces. We've got some mechanized forces back here. We've got some infantry forces up in the front. We're starting as the Soviets, and it's a Soviet offensive. So every turn in the game, usually when you're playing, it typically starts with the Germans for turn 1, and then the Soviets go for turn 2, again, because it's an I go, you go. And what that basically means is one side issues its orders and fights. Those orders are resolved. And then the other side gets to go and issue its orders and fights. However, in this case, because it's a Soviet offensive and the Germans are on the defensive, the Soviets get to go first, which then means the Germans go second. The offensive is taking place on November 24th of 1942. We are the Soviets here, and you can see that the Germans are actually pretty heavily dug in. If you want to get information about different units, you can, or hexes, you can just kind of hover over them and you'll get information. So you can see this is a light wooded terrain. It's controlled by the Soviets. This terrain is Velikie Luki. It's a city hex. It is in the Soviet Union. It is occupied by the Axis, however. You can see that the Soviet victory points can get up to 200 there. There is currently a temporary depot, which means even if we surround it, the Germans will still have some supply. You can see that it has rail access, I think, to the east, southwest, west, and northeast. And it is also a fortress hex, which means that the defenders there are going to be able to hold their ground under considerable pressure compared to what they have to bring to the fight themselves. Occasionally, you get news events in the upper left. You can basically see this is just a situation report explaining the battle. Occupied by the Germans since August 1941, the city of Velikie Luki has a great strategic value due to the main north-south railway line running just west of the city at Novosolinki, as well as the city's own rail network to Vitebsk. The city has been fortified, just as strategic for the Soviets as the Germans. The city dominated the region and would therefore be the natural point for fighting. As long as the German army occupied both rail junctions at Velikie Luki, the Red Army could not reliably reinforce or resupply its troops on the north face of the massive Rizhev salient. So, is there a Russian language option? I don't know, PETA, although I would not be surprised if the game eventually supports it. I don't think it does right now. Okay, so with that being said, you can see here on the map, these are the units on the map. We're the Soviets, so we control these guys. We're currently in the air operation phase, which means that we have to go ahead and issue air orders for our forces. You get a turn summary. We'll look at that next time. Right now, we don't really have any need to look at it because there was no previous turn. So you can see here the Third Air Army has a whole bunch of sub-units or headquarters. There's air bases at Adriapol, at Nilodovo, Staratopa, Belai, Dugnino, and whatnot. You can see these are the different air units that are under the Third Air HQ or Air Army. You can see here there's the 292nd Shad, the 263rd BAD, the 266th Shad, and the 274th IAD, as well as the first Shad. I don't know what these abbreviations all mean, as well as the Third Air Army Recon Group. That one's easy. Anyway. So you can manually order air attacks and all these other things if you really want to. I don't want to do that. That's not something that I want to manage. And so the game does give you an ability to sort of automate some of these orders, some of these functions. And so I'm going to do that for our air operations. So the first thing is I'm going to go ahead and click on the Third Air Army. And then I'm going to go ahead and see, well, it gives us a breakout of the different units here, but I'm going to go ahead and give them a directive to give us some ground support. So basically ground support directives mean that they're going to support the Third Shock Army, which is the ground forces over here, with air attacks when they need them. So essentially these are, you know, what you would think ground support missions. Additionally, they already have a directive to launch some recon missions. And if we click on the recon directive, we can see they have 20 aircraft assigned to the Third Air Recon Army, which is going to look at this box here. So they're going to run recon missions along this entire front line, basically inside this box. Our ground support missions are going to occur. I don't know if I have a box, but it's going to basically, it's going to support the Third Shock Army. So wherever the Third Shock Army attacks, they will automatically get ground support to the tune of 98 tactical bombers, I believe. And then, 98 mission aircraft and 82 escort aircraft. So 82 fighters and 98 bombers are going to support the Third Shock Army. And I think that's fair. By the way, flying weather apparently is poor right now. Or no, their directive is that they'll fly up to Por. In any event, I don't really need to do anything else right now because these directives are already issued. So I'm going to go ahead and execute the air directive, and we'll move forward. Every turn consists, I believe, of 4 phases. There's the logistics phase. There is the every turn starts with the logistics phase for the Axis or the Allies, depending on who's going first. Then you get your air operations phase. After your air operations phase, then you have your ground operations phase. And I believe the 4th phase is like resupply and logistics and whatnot on the back end of that, although I'm not sure. I know the manual says there's 4 directives. I can't remember off the top of my head what that 4th directive is. Okay, so you can see down here, the 7th day is complete, or the 7th turn, 7th day is more or less complete. And you can see here we flew 24 sorties. We lost 7 aircraft over the course of the day. These were all sorties flown by the recon group. The ground support didn't fly because the ground support will fly when we actually initiate our ground attacks. So they didn't do anything yet, but that piece of the air operations will occur when we launch our ground attacks. So in terms of what we're doing now, so we've done some recon over here. We can see that Velikie Luki consists of the Velikie Luki fortress. There's obviously troops in there. I'm not sure what they are. If we look to the southwest, we can see here that there is the 3rd, I don't know how to pronounce that, Skijäger Battalion and the 283rd Infantry Division. To the south of that, there is a security regiment. This feels like this might be a vulnerable sector to attack here. And then to the southeast of that, the front line has the 5th Skijäger Battalion. So 2 battalions, I guess, here, or a battalion and maybe a brigade here, and then a security regiment and a security or a ski battalion down here. Remember, the objectives are the flags here. There's 3 objectives here, 1 up here. You can see our own forces on the map here. The number to the right represents sort of the movement points. So if you see here, I can go ahead and this unit has 16 movement points. So if I click on this first unit, this is the 257th Rifle Division. If we take a look at the Rifle Division here, we can see it has a couple of pieces of information here for this particular unit. First off, the number 4 represents its combat value, I believe. That's the first number here on the left. So it's 4, but you can see it's 4.63. It's TOE, basically how full is the unit in terms of its overall complement. A lot of units generally are not going to be at full strength. So you can see it's at 44% of its rifle strength. The sort of ideal 100% strength of the unit would be here on the left. On the right, you can see the actuals that these guys are fighting with. If we go below that, you can see the max TOE is up to 100%. Its headquarters, the 3rd Shock Army. Its operational headquarter is the Kalinin Front. So that's, I guess, the battle we're looking at is just at the army level. But if you were to go up to the next level, its front headquarters is the Kalinin Front. Morale is 60, or maybe it's 50. I'm not quite sure how to read that in parentheses. It's a Soviet Union unit. Supply need 81 out of 83. Fuel need 6 out of 6. Ammo need 163 out of 194. Support needed. It has 0 support, needs 1. Construction value 5. Transport costs, vehicles needed. It's a non-motorized unit, and its current supply situation is it's in supply. Commando Solo, thanks for the bits. All right, so that's the situation with that particular unit. You can see 16 movement points. Again, my understanding is you can hover over it, you can select a unit, and then if you sort of move your mouse around here, it'll show you the movement points that get moved out by where it would move. So I don't want to. I guess let's do it this way. Not that unit. By the way, I'm not 100% sure why some of these units are locked and I can't move them all, but some of them are locked and I can't move them all. Anyway, so we click to here and you can see here the 1st, 2nd mechanized is currently selected by us. They have 41 movement points. So you can see we can move quite a ways all the way to the edge of the map here, or we could move to the north if we wanted to drive on Luknaya. But I think what we're going to do actually is we're going to go ahead and move them west. And we're going to just right click to select where we want them to move. You can see they went from 41 to 37 movement points, and they moved into position, and you got the little sound effect there. These units have no movement points apparently. The 3rd, 2nd Mechanized Corps and the 7th 0 currently have no movement points. The units up here to the north, the 249th Estonian Rifle Division, the 7th Estonian Rifle Division, and the 19th Guards Rifle Division also have no movement points, so I'm not allowed to move them. Same for the 44th Ski Brigade currently. They will get movement points eventually, but right now, for whatever reason, they don't. If we take a look at the forces arrayed against the Germans here. So we now have a mechanized force here, as well as the 21st Guards Rifle Division. We've got the 357th Rifle Division, 46th Guards Rifle Division, and the 9th Guards Rifle Division. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to launch an attack. Not, by the way, if you right click, it selects to move there. So don't right click unless you want to move where your cursor is. But if you can see here, I don't want to attack this fortress here. This seems like a bad idea. Attacking forts seems like a generally unwise move. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to try and cut their supply. And the way I'm going to cut their supply is I'm going to cut their railroads. There's a railroad moving in directly from the west. There's also a railroad moving in from the south. Additionally, let's see here, map info. I do want to show roads because that's a thing you can do. All right, so we can see roads now here as well. Now that we click that button, you can see these are like roads for trucks to move along. But I want to try and cut these guys in this fortress off. So what I'm going to do that is the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have to drive off the 3rd Ski Jaeger Battalion and the 2nd 83rd Infantry Division. You can see their overall combat value looks like it's about 3.3. But there's fog of war involved in that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on the 357th Rifle Division. I'm actually going to double click, and that's going to select all 3 divisions here. Now, if I want to hover over these guys, you'll see here, this is going to be a hasty attack. If I do nothing else, this is going to be a hasty attack. A hasty attack allows you to attack out of one hex toward one other hex. You can select multiple units, but they all have to be out of the same hex. I can't use the units to the south to support the attack. You can see here as we hover over the attack objective, the attack CV or combat value is 9.4. It says the defensive combat value is 6.8. A 1-to-1 ratio will often not convince the enemy to retreat, and so that's not a great ratio for us to have if we want to win this fight. Additionally, the enemy troops are dug in with 2 fort levels you can see down there at 10%, which means that they may get a modifier to that defensive value and do even better. And hasty attacks are generally not the best way to attack. If we hold the left shift key down, we can see this is what a deliberate attack will look like, a more methodical attack. It uses up more movement points to do that. But you can see here a deliberate attack would give us 18 combat value against the enemy's still 6.8. If I'm not happy with that, if I think that's not good enough, I can actually just hover my mouse cursor over this hex to the south, and you can see both the 1st, 2nd Mechanized Corps and the 357th Rifle Division will be brought into the attack as well. And then you can see it'll increase our attack value up to 31.5, still against the enemy's 6.8. And so if I go ahead and right click, the attack will occur, the enemy units retreat, you get some information up here about the actual battle here, and then you can see that hex has become Russian, if you will. However, because it was a deliberate attack, I am not able to move a lot of these units. We don't have the available movement points to move into this newly occupied hex and to take the hex over. I guess it costs extra movement points to move into a recently conquered hex. I can move my mechanized force, by the way, so I could move this mechanized force in here if we really wanted to, and to try and see maybe what we, to take the hex, if you will, to prevent the Germans just from moving back into the hex and retaking it from us. The one thing that I'm a little bit cautious of doing that with is these guys are just, they're not the strongest unit. They only have 103 rifle squads. They have 31 T-34s. They've got no KV-1s, so their TOE includes KV-1s, but they currently have none. And they've got 22 T-70s, so this feels vulnerable to an enemy counterattack. I don't want to expose them to that, so I'm not going to do that right now. What I am going to go ahead and do, though, is actually, can we take a look at this? So I just went ahead and chose an overlay here to allow us to see ground battles. So then I can go ahead and click on this particular fight, and we can see the details here. So you can see the attack occurred on November 24th, 1942. It occurred in light snow. It was cold. It was a clear hex. The defender's combat value was 105, which apparently with their, I'm assuming there's a dice roll here, converted somehow to only 25. And then you can see they had 5,400 troops. They lost 248. They lost 13 of their 91 guns. They lost 17 of their 22 armored vehicles. Meanwhile, the attackers had a 268 combat value that somehow rolled the 72. I don't quite understand what that translates to. But you can see we attacked with 41,541 troops, lost 577, so almost double to the enemy. But we lost 20 guns, they lost 13. We lost 21 armored vehicles, they lost 17, so more even there. And you can see we had 82 fighters and 55 attack planes support the attack, of which we lost 5 aircraft. You can scroll through here and see the different units involved and get a little bit more information. You can also see detail if you want to go ahead and jump in and see all of the detail for the particular fight that's ongoing. And you can see the results of the air missions and whatnot as well for this particular fight. In any event, we drove the enemy back. I want to get rid of this. How do I get rid of this? No. Oh, move back to movement mode. Okay. So I think we're going to leave this hex open. I don't want to attack into it. I'm just going to leave it be for now, and I'll let the Germans move back into it if they won't. They won't be dug in. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go ahead and try and attack this security regiment here, the 85th Security Regiment, with these troops that are just south of the attack. These guys already participated in one attack, but they can actually attack again, and they can do a deliberate attack here because they didn't use up all their movement points. So if we go ahead and attack here, sorry, habit I left clicked. I should right click. So we'll deliberate attack here, and we'll see how this goes. Okay, so we drove the 85th Security Regiment back. They lost more men than we did, and there you go. We took another hex here, although we're not moving our troops into the hex to take possession of the hex quite yet. In any event, we did drive these guys back. And then what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't attack the Ski Jaeger Battalion here to the south with a deliberate attack. It looks like our mechanized troops are able to support. No, they're actually not, so I can't do that. I can only attack with these guys. Which would still give me close to a 2-to-1 advantage. It's a little bit more dicey here with just the 28th Rifle Division attacking here, but we're going to go ahead and try it anyway. And the Ski Jaeger Battalion did withdraw as well, and they lost almost 3 times our casualties. Meanwhile, our infantry unit here, which attacked, also still has enough movement points so that they can follow up the attack. So we will move them into that hex down here. And we took that particular objective. So good result for us on this first turn here south of Velikie Luki. We are uncovering the enemy flank, and hopefully we will have a little bit more success here as things progress. This is more pages last year than your university project for your bachelor's degree, Peanut. Yeah, the manual it's a big one. So I'm not going to attack with these guys. This HQ is going to stay put. I can't move these mechanized troops. I can't move any of these troops. So the only other thing I really might want to do is see if the 31st Rifle Brigade or the 381st Divisions want to move down here, because the enemy unit to the west of Velikie Luki is it's a relatively weak force here, the 2nd 83rd Infantry Division. So I could move down here and try and attack them. But I think there's an objective up here at Luknaya that I would like to see if we can't move towards. So I'm going to take the 381st Rifle Division and move up here to the north, cut this rail line up here toward Luknaya, and see if we can't maybe move toward the objective itself. We'll reinforce the flank unit here with the 31st Rifle Brigade covering their left flank as we attempt to move up here and see if we can't have some pressure on this northern objective. And that's it for this turn. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to let the turn sit. The game does allow me to manage depots and manage supplies. I don't really want to do that. So this has another nice AI management function where I can go ahead and have the AI manage my depots. And so it manages getting supplies and reinforcements and all that to the front. So I don't have to do that. And then I can go ahead and end the first turn. That'll move us into the German turn, where they're going to follow the same exact process as what you saw from me. And so you can see the Germans are going to do their air recon first, then they're going to do their ground movements, and then we'll see if they launch any counterattacks against us or just sort of reinforce their positions. By the way, you can see the red shaded hexes represent hexes that are controlled by the enemy. So when we were playing, the German hexes were covered red. Now our hexes are covered red. You can turn that overlay on or off as you like. The German Air Force, by the way, in this sector apparently is very, very weak. They've got like just a handful of aircraft here, mostly for reconnaissance, but I don't think they have a whole lot of strike aircraft. Do units gain veterancy, Jet? Yeah, I believe units do gain experience as they fight more. To some extent. I'd have to go back and look at the detailed card for the unit to see how impactful experience is, but I'm pretty darn sure it's in there. It's been in every other Grigsby game that I'm aware of. And so this just takes a little bit of time. I was kind of surprised, like these turns take a little while to resolve, but you know, sitting for a minute or so on a very narrow front. I was very worried about how long turns might take to resolve when you're playing as the full campaign. But the first playthrough for the Germans, both their air and ground phase in the attack, the Operation Barbarossa, it took about 10 minutes, which is a long time, but not like as long as I guess I would have thought, with given the fact that this seems to take like a minute just doing this part. So I think, I mean, you can definitely speed or slow things down, speed up or slow things down as you like in the game. But in terms of like if there's delays and whatnot, but I found it relatively manageable. Not too much worse than War in the Pacific anyway. Okay, so we're back into the air phase. You can see the Germans did launch some limited counteroffensive, or at least they drove back and took some territory behind these divisions of ours. You can see they almost encircled these two divisions. I don't think I have to worry about that too much because one of these other divisions can now move, so I can get them down here to block that front. Looks like the Germans moved the 564th Security Infantry Battalion into the Velikie Luki fortress to strengthen it, to give it some reinforcements. And then you can also see that they do have the 2nd 8th Panzer Division, the 1st 8th Panzer Division up here, and then they've got the 3rd 8th Panzer Division located over here. So they are shifting troops toward Lukai. It looks like they have the 83rd Replacement Infantry Battalion and the 3rd Panzer Army headquarters currently located at that objective. And they don't have any troops in Nivelle, which is a victory objective. So hell yeah, we're gonna take that if it's unoccupied. That's great. Meanwhile, they have lost these 2 hexes here, which implement a railroad north from Nivelle, but they do still have the rail directly to the west. So the troops here at the Velikie Luki fortress are not yet isolated. But you can see here up here in the turn summary of the last turn, we lost 2,138 troops, 31 guns, 21 armed vehicles, and 18 aircraft. It looks like the Axis lost 1,968 men, 118 vehicles, 26 armored vehicles, or sorry, 118 guns, 26 armored vehicles, and 19 aircraft. And so the total Axis losses thus far between the 2 turns are 2,300, 76, 27, and 39. I think I'm reading that right. Anyway, this says OB changes, but this is Soviet. It doesn't show me Axis then. Or I guess it's just over here on the right, their total losses. That's a little bit confusing. Anyway. How do encirclements work? Well, you can do them, Mr. Thumb. You've got to encircle the enemy first, so we'll get to that in a little bit. All right, so let's see. What are we going to do? First things first is I want to make sure that we don't forget to... Oh, wait, I forgot. This is the air operation phase. So 3rd Air Group, I think, still has the same orders, but we'll just kind of keep giving them ground support directives. So they still have recon as an order, and they still have auto ground support. Meanwhile, you can see here there's a partisan report. Partisans are becoming active throughout much of the Axis-occupied territory. The Soviet Union partisan attacks intensity 1 or 2 in many USSR regions. Not quite sure how that impacts anything for me in this particular narrow front. One other thing, by the way, when you do click on these guys, you can also see that different airfields have different sort of supply situations. So if we... Well, we saw it before anyway. Different air bases have different supply situations. It does look like the 3rd Air Army has 89, I'm assuming that's 89% strength of its TOE, and then 90 for the first shake. Reconnaissance group, this is green here. These turn yellow, by the way, when they run low on supply. So I'm not too worried about the German air forces. They don't seem to have much in the way of striking power. So we'll keep doing the ground support and then also the recon. So we'll execute the air directives. Because I'm letting the AI do that. There's not a ton for me to do there. And you can see the recon flights continue here. Recon group's at 65%. I'm assuming that's strength. So that's actually kind of weak. Bomb the enemy air bases to be sure, Jet. No, man, I need to keep those bombers for support of my offensive. By the way, these little red icons, these represent like factories and production. So these are producing manpower, but they've taken damage, presumably due to German occupation. And so a lot of these places aren't producing manpower reserves. Not really relevant in an individual campaign like this. Much more relevant in the overall grand campaign. Okay, so you can see we had 24 air recon flights going. The weather was very poor. The 24 flights were in 2 raids, so 12 flight planes each, and we lost 4 aircraft. So we're back to the ground operations phase. And with that being said, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move this 44th Ski Brigade down here to close the gap between these troops and to take that terrain back. So we've got a clear line of I don't know, supply or whatever. Meanwhile, would I want to do a deliberate attack against this armored unit? Maybe. We could turn the enemy flank here and open the road up to Luknaya. I'm tempted to just use the 381st Division and move up here and then try and attack, since the enemy only has a replacement battalion up there. But I'm not sure that that's a terribly smart idea right now. So what I'm going to do is we also get the 26th Rifle Brigade, which has just arrived on the map as well. Let's move these guys. Oh, hell. These guys are... Let's move them just into... What do I want to do? Do any of these guys... These guys still don't have movement points. So I could move them north here to support the drive up there, but rather than that, let's do this. First things first. Let's try and launch an attack with the 381st Rifle Division and the 31st Rifle Brigade against the 3rd 8th Panzer Division, and see if we can't attack these guys. And that may allow us to turn the flank of these guys and open up a road toward Luknaya up here in the north. All right, so the 3/8 retreated. They lost 206 men, 13 guns. They didn't lose any of their vehicles, but we did manage to drive them back. I also am able to use the 38th Rifle Division to move north now that we've secured that right flank. I'll move the 26th Rifle Brigade here to link these troops all up. And I don't think I have any movement points left to attack Luknaya this turn anyway, so they may bring in reinforcements, but at least for the moment anyway, we've drove back that German panzer unit. And if we go ahead and we take a look at the detailed battle results, we can see that the enemy lost apparently they only had 7 armored vehicles, but they did lose 13 guns and 200 troops. We lost about the same number of men, actually. So we can take a look. This is general info, ground losses. Destroyed. It does say 1 ground SK, whatever this is. Oh, it's a flak vehicle. Armored car, pioneer squads. Okay, interesting. Have I gotten my hard copy book yet, Randy? No, I have not. This was a digital copy that was given to me by the folks at Slytherin and Matrix, so I have not gotten anything yet. I might buy. I don't think they're sending that, but I might buy it just to get that. I did print out 100 pages. It was like, this is one of the 5 times all year I print anything on my printer that doesn't print color because it's broken. All right, so we did succeed and attack that, which means that Northern Railway is pretty firmly cut up to Luknaya, although they do have roadways up there. So maybe we'll get to Luknaya next turn. Meanwhile, in the south, we're going to go ahead and advance the 28th Rifle Division into Nivelle, which is an objective, and so we capture the depot there as well. Looks like there is a motorized division to the west and a couple of ski Jaeger battalions to the north of that objective. I also have additional mechanized forces available to us. So we're going to try and cut Velikie Luki off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 3rd, 2nd, and the 2nd mechanized formations here. Each of them have a combat value of 50. We're going to go ahead and move them both in here. I'm going to go ahead and move my infantry. I can't move them all. This other mechanized formation can't move there either. Huh. Looks like we should be pretty pretty able to attack this individual unit here. It's just the 2nd 83rd Infantry Division, so we're going to do that. Oops. All right, so the enemy unit retreated. And now, in theory, Velikie Luki is surrounded. You can see here the hex is controlled. It is surrounded. However, it does have a depot with a rail yard, and it has 135 trucks available to it. So presumably these guys are going to be in supply for a little while. It is isolated. You can see on the bottom there it says hex isolated, but it's unlikely that I'm going to be able to take that for a few more turns until we've, effectively starved them out. So what else do we want to do? I can actually move this mechanized formation up if I want to try and put troops in that position. Seems like a bad idea to me. One mechanized formation all by itself. I'd rather wait. So let's do this. Let's move these mechanized forces up to the left here a little bit more to the west. And we'll do a deliberate attack against these two enemy ski Jaeger battalions. Just to clear Nivelle a little bit. You can see we actually captured one of the enemies, it looked like. And then we routed and one of the enemy units and another one retreated here. So you can see the 3rd Ski Jaeger has an R next to them. They routed. I believe they're going to route from the map. And so we succeeded in our attack there. If we go back and take a look at the combat results, we can see that the 3rd Ski Jaeger routed. The 1st Ski Jaeger retreated. They lost 521 men, 26 guns, and overall a pretty good result there. Can't really move anyone into that hex either. Although I am going to move the 9th Guards Division into Nivelle, just in case this enemy mechanized motorized division here counterattacks against us. Okay. So I know you were asking Jet about experience. I don't see anything about that in here. Apparently they've won one battle and lost none. That's funny. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's right. The game has like its own Wikipedia, which has all sorts of information about the individual units, which ties back to like actual Wikipedia in some cases, I believe. But you can see like a crazy amounts of detail about different units and divisions that are involved. And you can see just, yeah, there's a lot of info if you want to dig into that. So, yeah. I wonder, what is this little symbol here? I have to like pull out my manual and try and look my manual, the stupid 100 pages I printed. It's going to be in there somewhere. But I'm not sure I want to pull through that in the chat. But I'm kind of wondering if this little fire symbol here is like, or whatever this thumbs up symbol is might be experience. Because combat value is to the right. That's the cross swords. First column is, oh, that's fatigue. First column is experience. Okay. All right. So with that being said, do we want to attack anywhere else? Probably not. I don't think I have the strength to do it. This northern line is very vulnerable to enemy counterattacks, but we're going to be getting reinforcements. We could try and turn the entire position with these guys attacking and swinging around. That's a little more ambitious than I think I am right now. So first thing, let's go ahead and let's take a look at some of the info here now that we're a couple turns in. You can see on the map, the Germans have 173,856 troops. I believe the parentheses are like currently ready for combat. 801 guns, 46 vehicles, 53 aircraft. They have 2,200 troops in reserve, 20 guns, so a very small reserve force. The Soviets, meanwhile, 150,000, 2,500 guns, 376 armored vehicles, and 186 aircraft. So we massively outnumber the enemy. If we go ahead and take a look at the casualties here, you can see so far, last action, 524 Axis losses to 114 Soviet. Current turn, 2,015 Axis losses to 1,800 Soviet. Men killed on the German side, 544. Men captured, 157. Men disabled, 1,300. Compare that with 415 and nobody captured on the, or 8 captured on the Soviet side. So far in the campaign, 2,500 Axis casualties, 82 guns and 21 vehicles, about half as many guns and just a few more vehicles on the Soviet end, while about the same number of troops. If we want to take a look at graphs here, we can see here graphs, total victory points, city victory points, enemy men lost, guns lost. These are just victory points, but if we want to look at total order of battle, you can see these charts will show, you know, your forces over the course of a campaign or over the course of a battle, and give you a good sense of like what direction things are headed in terms of if you're just trying to gauge the performance across the campaign. There's a whole bunch of information here that you can just use and track. And you know, you've got fuel stores, you've got fuel required, oil stores, supply stores, manpower pool, all these sorts of things that I think are much more relevant in a larger battle than this. So with that being said, let's go ahead and end this particular turn, and we'll continue the attacks on turn number 3. Oh, don't want to forget about depot management. We'll just let the AI do it. You attack enemy strength first, Jet. You know, sometimes that, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the right strategy is. I didn't play a ton of War in the East. I'm much more of a War in the Pacific sort of a fan, but I'm definitely going to be playing War in the East on this channel considerably. I do plan to play my first full-blown campaign from the Soviet side. I'm hoping that gives me a bit of a learning curve to like take some punches for a little while before you got to worry too much about how to counterpunch. But we'll see. I presume almost everyone on YouTube is going to be playing as the Germans, because who doesn't want to get to launch attacks? You know, who wants to sit back and get rolled for a while? All right, so German air operations are underway. They don't have very many aircraft again, so probably not a lot going on this particular turn. I'm kind of surprised how slow this turn resolves itself when the grand campaign goes relatively quickly, although it could just be a setting based on a delay or something. I'm also curious from like a game design perspective how they approach. Oh, they drove the rifle brigade back. So it looks like they may have retaken Nivelle. Or was I reading where that attack went wrong, where that attack was wrong? Oh, it was up here near Luknaya. So they drove the rifle brigade up here near Luknaya back. They also moved an armored unit in here to the west of Velikie Luki, which might actually be a nice place for us to attack now that we held our armored forces back here. Maybe we can get a nice little attack going here. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this episode of War in the East 2, the new game out by Matrix and Slytherin Games, actually made by 2x3 Games, published by Matrix and Slytherin Games. This is my first look at the game. It is a look at the tutorial scenario, or the scenario that is meant to be the tutorial. You kind of have to dig through the manual to find the instructions for it. There's nothing in the game for it. But I'm really enjoying my time with this so far. I think it's a really interesting look at the Eastern Front in World War II. Nothing can compare to the game in terms of its depth, in terms of its complexity. And I think for any hardcore war gamer, someone who's just ingrained in logistics and detail and depth, it's definitely worth at least checking out and keeping your eye on. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. There will be one more that looks at the conclusion of this particular fight. But until then, this is the Historical Gamer saying once again, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, I'm out.